Days before the World Cup kicks off on home soil, Mauricio Pochettino just sent a shocking message to the team standing in his way. And Paraguay should be worried. The United States lost their final tune up 2-1 to Germany, one of the most feared sides on the planet. But Pochettino did not walk off that field looking beaten. He walked off looking like a coach who had already figured out his next opponent. And what he said next was not confidence. It was the clearest, most direct warning anyone has sent so far, aimed at the team waiting for them on Friday, Paraguay. And here's the part that should make Paraguay nervous. When you actually dig into the history between these two sides and into Paraguay's single biggest weakness, Pochettino's confidence stops looking like spin. It starts looking like a warning, one backed by numbers. Let's start with why a coach who just lost is smiling. Listen to how Pochettino described the Germany defeat. He called it an even game, said his team was unlucky, and told reporters he was happy with the performance of everyone. He talked about character, togetherness, and a group learning to play under pressure against one of the best teams on the planet. That is not a man making excuses. That is a man who lost the scoreline and won the information. And the information was this. The team that started against Germany was, by most estimates, around 90% of the side that will line up against Paraguay. Pochettino's 4-2-3-1 formation looked far more controlled and compact than the shape he had tried against Senegal. His fullbacks, Sergiño Dest and Antonee Robinson, were a genuine weapon, flying forward to feed Pulisic and Balogun. He even hinted that the real focus now is managing his players' load. So the US arrives against Paraguay fresh and full of energy. In other words, he believes the team is ready. And Christian Pulisic said the quiet part out loud, telling reporters the US wants to prove ourselves right and make a real run in this tournament. So why the confidence against Paraguay specifically? To understand that, you have to look at history. These two teams are not strangers, and the pattern between them is remarkably consistent. At the 2016 Copa America, the United States beat Paraguay 1-0, with Clint Dempsey scoring and the Americans defending the lead with 10 men for more than 40 minutes after a red card. In 2018, they beat Paraguay 1-0 again, the goal coming after a young Tyler Adams won the ball, charged forward, and drew a penalty. And the most recent meeting? Another United States win, 2-1. Look closely and the story tells itself. When the United States beats Paraguay, it almost never does it with a blowout. It does it by staying patient, staying disciplined, forcing one mistake, and protecting the lead, which happens to be exactly the kind of tense, physical, low-scoring fight Paraguay drags every opponent into. But before anyone writes Paraguay off, understand who they actually are, because they are dangerous. Under coach Gustavo Alfaro, Paraguay have been rebuilt around defensive strength, intensity, and a fierce fighting spirit they call Gara Guarani. And their story, this cycle, is a genuine miracle. After scoring just once in their opening 6 qualifiers, Alfaro shook the group awake and lost only one of their final 12 matches, reaching their first World Cup since 2010. Their president declared a public holiday when they qualified. This is a team that beat both Brazil and Argentina at home along the way. They conceded just 10 goals in 18 matches, a record bettered by only one nation in all of South America. Defensively, they are a wall, and Alfaro tells anyone who will listen that this side is not addition, it's multiplication. And here is where it gets interesting, because that same wall hides a fatal flaw. Paraguay cannot score. That is not an insult. It is math. They found the net just 14 times in 18 qualifiers, an average of 0.78 goals a game, the joint lowest of any team that reached this World Cup. They failed to score in half of their matches. They had the lowest possession in South America and survived by sitting deep and hitting on the break. Paraguay do not want the ball. They want you to panic against their block. Even their most creative midfielder, the veteran Miguel Almiron, created more chances than anyone in the squad during qualifying, yet barely chipped in goals himself. The creativity exists, the finishing does not, and it gets worse for them. Their one true game changer, Julio Enciso, the forward who can manufacture a goal out of nothing, was stretchered off in tears with a muscle injury just a week before facing the US, and is a serious doubt for the opener. Take Enciso out, and Paraguay keep all their toughness, but lose the one player who turns half a chance into chaos. On top of that, they rotated through 6 different goalkeepers in qualifying. This is why Pochettino is smiling. Because Paraguay are built to win one type of game, and Pochettino knows precisely how to take it away from them. The plan is almost simple. Score first. The moment the US goes ahead, Paraguay are forced to do the one thing they are worst at on earth: chase a game and create chances. Stretch them wide, where Pulisic, Tim Weah, Dest, and Robinson can pull a compact 4-4-2 out of shape. Attack the space behind them with runners, the way Adams did back in 2018. Paraguay are comfortable defending possession. They hate defending sudden runs. The longer the game stays level, the more they believe. But take the lead, and the whole thing flips onto their weakest foot. Now, to be fair, this is no free pass. Paraguay's fighting spirit is real. They ran the eventual champion Spain close at the 2010 World Cup, and the US has its own glaring problem at the back, still without Chris Richards and trusting an unproven goalkeeper. If Paraguay land the first punch, every word of this confidence flips against Pochettino instead. But that is the gamble he is willing to make, because this is the opener of a home World Cup, the first on American soil since 1994. The payoff for an 8-year rebuild. Win this group, and the US earns an easier knockout road, and it all starts Friday night at SoFi Stadium. So here is Pochettino's warning to Paraguay, decoded. We know who you are. We have beaten you before, in exactly the kind of ugly fight you love. And we know the one thing you cannot do. You cannot score. Force you to try, and you are in real trouble. The only question left is whether he is right. Is this the smartest read at the entire World Cup? A coach who lost the game but understood the bigger picture? Or is a manager who just dropped 3 of his last 4 getting way ahead of himself? Tell me in the comments. And hit that notification bell, because on Friday, we find out if Pochettino's warning was a promise or a bluff.